Hi folks, this time around we are going to be working in Illustrator to create this owl graphic using a flat art or vector art style. This project is suited for beginners, but I do suggest that if you've never used the program before, go ahead and check out our Introduction to Illustrator video first. The point of this project is to help give you some practice working with colors and their values to help create good contrast between shapes without having to rely on your line work in order to get that distinction. Flat art is sometimes just called vector art, and the thing about this style is that it doesn't rely a whole lot on outlines to differentiate its shapes. It focuses on the colors and values to tell one shape from the other. That doesn't mean you can't use outlines at all, but you should mostly be using contrast to make your shapes readable. Okay, so if you haven't already, go ahead and open up Illustrator, and then we're going to make a brand new document. Now to get all the settings I need off the bat, I'm just going to go to Print. I'm going to select Letter, and then I'm just going to change my measurement to inches. And for the orientation, I'm going to set it to Landscape. So that way the width is 11 and the height is 8.5. And then all my other settings should be correct. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit Create. So now that we have a new document, we're going to go ahead and start on making the top of the head. So go ahead and find either your rectangle or your elliptical tool and right click on it and find your polygon tool. Once you have your polygon tool selected, hold either Alt or Option plus Shift and then just make a random shape on your board here. And then what we're going to do is, if you look to the right, you should notice there is a little diamond on the side of your bounding box here. If you hover over it, a plus and minus sign should appear. What this allows you to do is you can click on that diamond and drag it up and down to either add sides to a polygon, or you can drag it up to subtract sides from it. So go ahead and drag the little diamond up until you get a triangle. And then I'm going to switch over to my selection tool, and I'm going to right click, transform, reflect, and I want to reflect it horizontal, and then I'll just hit OK, and then I'm going to use my black arrow or the selection tool to just kind of make this triangle a little bit more squatty, maybe a little bit wider. I think I'll call that good. You'll notice that right now that the fill for the shape is set to white and the stroke is set to black. Right now I'm not too concerned with my colors, I'm just focusing on the actual construction of my owl here. So next is I'm going to make the body. An easy way to kind of make a body that will match up with the width of my triangle here is I'm just going to do Command or Control C, and then Command or Control plus Shift and then V. And you probably won't notice anything happen at first, but what we just did is we copied the triangle and then pasted it in place. Another way to do that is to just go to Edit, Copy, and then just paste in place. So I'm just going to select this top triangle here, and I'm just going to right click, Arrange, Send to Back, and then with that triangle still selected, I'm just going to use my black arrow to make it a little bit taller. And once I have the height of my owl, I'm going to hit Shift C to bring up my anchor point tool. You can also just look for your pen tool and right click, and you should notice the anchor point tool is in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on this anchor point down here, and I'm just going to click and drag until I get a nice rounded bottom here. And I want to make sure that the handles stay level with each other. There we go. And if you want to, you can always grab your white arrow or your direct selection tool and just select this bottom anchor point. And you can move it up if you want to make your owl a little bit more squatty. And then you can always select both of them, use your selection tool, and you can kind of change the proportions this way. Okay, and then I'm just going to modify my owl a bit more. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and I'm going to create a oval that I can use for the belly here. And I'm not too worried about how much of it hangs off the bottom here. I'm just worried about the shape it makes on top of the owl. So I think I actually want to go a little bit further up. Okay, so I think that's a good placement for the belly here. Now, in order to trim this bottom half here, you can either just grab your eraser tool, or what you can do to make it easy is just select both shapes. So we're selecting the main part of the body and the belly here. And then I'm going to go to Pathfinder. If you can't find your Pathfinder panel, just go to Window, and Pathfinder should be in the list here. But once you have those both selected, you're going to go to your Pathfinder panel. In the second row, you're going to click on that first option, which is Divide. And what that did is it combined these two into one shape, but it has intersecting lines where everything overlapped. So I want to get rid of this bottom half here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, right click, ungroup. Then I just have to deselect everything, and now I should be able to grab this bottom half, and it should be separate from what's going on here, and I can just go ahead and delete it. And you'll notice that our kind of triangle or our crown disappeared. I'm just going to select both of these again, and then just right click, arrange, send to back, and everything is layered properly again. Alright, so now I'm going to grab my pen tool, which is this tool right here, and I'm just going to make kind of a little ear tuft at the top here for my owl. And I want to make sure that it is flush. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that little triangle is selected, and then what I'm going to do is, rather than just drawing a brand new triangle over here, I'm going to select this one here, right click, transform, reflect, make sure it's set to vertical, and instead of hitting OK, I'm going to hit copy. And from here I can just move it into place. And I want these triangles to be connected with this one. So I'm going to select all three of these triangles, and then back in the Pathfinder panel, I'm going to go to the first row and hit Unite, which is that first option. And you should notice that it now becomes one big shape. If you notice that there are still lines right here, that means that your triangles weren't flush against the shape. So just Control Z and then move it so that way your triangles are flush against the other one, or at the very least they're overlapping with it. Okay, so now I'm going to make the eyes for my owl here, and I'm just going to grab the ellipse tool, and holding Alt or Option and Shift on your keyboard, I'm just going to make an eye. And then once I have this one done, I'm going to do the Command or Control C, and then Command or Control Shift V, and then I'm going to do Command or Control Shift V again. So at the end I should have 3 circles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top one, and I'm just going to bring this in to make our iris. And then for the second big circle, I'm actually going to nudge this down using my arrow keys, because I kind of want to create like an coal or like a lower lid effect. And to make sure that it looks right, I'm just going to right click, arrange, and send to back. That way I can see what the other circle kind of looks like. And the only color I'm going to add to the eyeball is in this circle here. So for this circle and then this circle here, I'm just going to change those fills to black. You can kind of see what it looks like, and if you need to adjust this bottom one here, you can. And then just select all three of those circles, hit Command or Control G to group them. And then just move it over to your owl and resize them if you have to. And just place them where you want them to go. And then in order to make the other eyeball, I'm going to right click, transform, reflect. Again, make sure it's set to vertical and hit copy, not OK. And I'm just going to hold shift, and with my black arrow, I'm just dragging this over. There we go. Now if you want a like little happy owl, you can go ahead and leave your eyes as is. But if you want kind of an angrier looking owl, just select both of them and just send them backwards, so that way they're underneath your crown here. The shortcut for that is going to be Command or Control left bracket, or you can just right click, arrange, and send backward. Okay, so now I'm going to make the beak, and I'm going to make that by going to my ellipse tool. And I'm going to make a tall oval. And then I'm going to switch over to my anchor point tool. Remember, you can either hit Shift C or just find your pen tool and right click. And with that anchor point tool, I'm going to click on this bottom anchor point, so that way it turns into a hard corner. And then I'm going to use my direct selection tool. Just kind of lengthen the beak a little bit, and I want to select this top anchor point as well and bring that down. And if you hold shift while you click and drag stuff, it will make sure it goes in either a vertical or horizontal line depending on where you're dragging. I think that's a good shape. Try and get like a upside down teardrop. And once I have that shape, I'm just going to move it over to my owl. If you have to resize it, go ahead. You can just use your black arrow to do that. And if you need to move your eyeballs any, you can. Then from here, I'm going to make my feet. The feet are going to be really simple. I'm just going to grab my ellipse tool again. I'm going to make a tall oval, not quite as tall as the one we made earlier. There we go. Then I'm going to do the Command or Control C, Command or Control Shift V, and then with my black arrow, I'm just going to slightly rotate it and just hold shift and move it over to the right. And then I want another oval that's kind of tilting at the same degree, so I'm going to right click on the very left toe, go to Transform, Reflect, make sure that's set to vertical, hit Copy, and then with my black arrow I'm just holding shift to bring it to the other side. And now I've got my foot. I'm just going to select all three ovals, hit Command or Control G, so that way they're grouped together. Move it onto my owl, and then hold Alt or Option, and just drag the copy over, so that way your owl has 2 feet. And if you need to align something, because I think mine are a little bit off, just go to your align panel. If you can't find it, just go to window and align. And in the first row, I'm going to go to the second to last option here, which is the vertical align center. I'm just going to hit that to make sure that they're both even, and then just make any adjustments to the placement. So now we're going to go ahead and make the wing, and kind of the shape we want for the wing is we want it to kind of go a bit like this on both sides, and the easiest way we can do that is to just grab our ellipse tool again, and we're going to make a really big tall oval. I'm going to switch the fill over to white and make sure it has a black stroke on it so that way I can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit easier. And then with my white arrow or my direct selection tool, I'm going to select this bottom anchor point, and I'm just going to move it over a little to the right. So this is going to be my left wing. If you're making your right wing, you'd want to move the anchor point to the left. And I'm just going to grab this handle and adjust the curve a little bit. And then from here, I'm going to make sure I have the shape selected. I'm going to right click, go to arrange, send to back. And I'm just going to move it over towards my owl and make any adjustments that I need. For your wing, you usually don't want it to go above your eyeball, so I'm just going to change the height and width on this. Maybe bring that wing up. I think that looks good. And then to make my other wing, I'm just going to select this, right click, transform, reflect, make sure it's set to vertical, hit copy, and then I can just bring it straight over to the other side. There we go. I think I might bring this in just a little bit more. And to make sure they're even. Okay, so now that I have the basic shape for my owl here, I can start worrying about the colors and the decorations. I think for my owl, I'm going to use some purples and blues. So I'm just going to select this crest up here, and then I'm going to pick a color for that. Make sure you have your fill selected. And I'm just working in my color panel. You can also grab a color from up here if you want. Okay, and then I'm also going to go back to the stroke, and I'm going to hit this none option right here, so that way the stroke is turned off. Because again, I want this to be in that flat style, so I want the colors to help build the shapes and not rely on outlines and strokes to separate each parts of the owl. So I think I want my wings to match my crest here, so I'm just going to select both of them. Hit I on your keyboard or just find your eyedropper tool. And I'm going to click on the crest here, and it will use the same settings for my wings. For this part of the body, again, I'm going to set the stroke to none. And I'm going to use my eyedropper to find this purple. But I'm going to pick a lighter color of it. And then I'm going to leave my beak and my feet black because I kind of like that look. But for the belly here, what I want to do is rather than just picking one color to fill it in, I'm going to add like a feather texture to it. So before I start working in there, I'm going to make the actual shape for the feathers on the belly. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to grab my ellipse tool. And I'm going to hold Alt and Shift to make a circle. And then once I have that first circle, I can just go back to my selection tool, hold Alt or Option, and then if you hold Shift as well, that helps you move everything. And I'm just going to shift it over until I see that intersect guide. So that way these two circles should just be touching. And I'm going to keep building out this line of circles. I think for this I'm going to want an odd number. So I'm just going to drag out one more. Now I have all of these circles done. I'm going to make them a little bit smaller. And then with my direct selection tool or the white arrow, I'm going to select the tops of all of these circles here. I just want this very top anchor point on each of them. I don't want the middle anchor points or the bottom. And once I have these top anchor points selected, I'm just going to go ahead and hit delete or backspace. And then I'm left with these half moons. And I want to connect the shape. So with my direct selection tool, I'm just going to highlight where the circles connect. And I'm going to right click, join, and I'm just going to keep going down the line. There we go. And I'm going to switch back over to my pen tool. And I'm going to click on one of the endpoints here. And what you'll notice is with your pen tool, if you hover over an open anchor point, a little slash will appear next to your pen tool. What that is telling you is that you can build onto this shape from here. So clicking on either this anchor point or the one on the other side, I'm just going to click and go straight up. And then I'm going to go across and close the shape out on the other side. That way when I go to layer these feathers on top of each other, I'll have a little bit of wiggle room to layer them and they don't have to be right on top of each other. So now I'm going to pick a color for my top row of feathers. I think I'm going to pick like a really pale or like a pinkish purple. And if you're having trouble with the sliders, you can just click on the square there and it brings up a more traditional color picker. I'm going to go more into the pink so that way it really stands out. There we go. I'll hit OK. Then I'm going to hit Command or Control X, or you can go to Edit and Cut. And then I'm going to select this belly here. And I'm going to make sure the stroke is turned off on it. But I'm going to leave the fill on white. I'm going to make sure it's selected. And then I'm going to go over to my tool panel. And I'm going to go to this third to last tool here. If you hover over it, it should say Drawing Modes. It is the little icon with the square on top of the circle. If you click on that, you should get three options: Draw Normal, Draw Behind, and Draw Inside. Draw Normal is just the default setting for Illustrator. As you draw new objects, each one gets laid on top of each other. Draw Behind sets it so every time you draw a new shape or you paint a new stroke, everything gets sent to the immediate back of your piece. And then there's Draw Inside. What that allows you to do is if you have a shape like this selected, you can then hit Draw Inside, and for every new shape or new stroke we add, it's going to be put inside of that shape there. So if I hit Command or Control V, you'll see that that row of feathers that we cut earlier gets put into the shape there. And I'm just going to move this up to the top. And if you deselect it, you'll notice that we can only see as much of those feathers that are overlapping with our belly shape here. And if you want to go back inside something, it's like right now I clicked out on my artboard and it deselected the shape. So if I went to move those feathers, it just ends up moving the whole belly. In order to get back inside of it, I'm just going to double click, and you see it'll go into your clip group, which is our belly here, and it'll let you edit things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Alt or Option and Shift, and I'm going to click and drag to make a duplicate of these feathers here, and I'm going to go down to the very bottom of my belly. And I'm going to right click, go to Arrange, and hit Send to Back, because what we're going to do next is, rather than duplicating these feathers over and over again, we're going to use our blend tool, and in order to get them to layer right, I want to make sure that this row of feathers is behind this row of feathers, so that way each new row gets put underneath the last one. Now before I go and grab my blend tool though, I'm actually going to change the color of this. And I think I'm going to pick like an almost dark blue, maybe like a dark violet. Then I'll hit OK. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my blend tool. The shortcut for that should be W. It should be that little tool that looks like a circle transitioning to a square. I'm going to click on that tool, and I'm going to click on this top row first. And I'm going to click on this bottom row. And you should see it will create a bunch of shapes in between the two. Now for mine, it has a whole bunch of them. I don't want that many feathers. So in order to get to the settings, with these still selected, I'm going to double click on that tool. And on spacing, I'm going to change that from smooth color to specified steps. And as I go down, there will be less copies between the two. And you can add as many or as few as you want. For this, I think I need at least 3, because you can see if I just go to 2, I have white gaps that I don't want. So I think 3 is good. But I do want more of that dark color to show up underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my direct selection tool. And you'll see this line going between the two shapes. I'm going to click on this and then hold Shift and just drag it up a little bit. And when you let go, you should notice that the transition is shorter. So I'm just going to bring this down a little bit more. There. I think I'll drag this up. There we go. And if you ever want to edit the settings again, just select this blend and then double click on the tool and it'll bring up these blend options. Another way to get to all this is you select both of the objects you want the blend to happen between, and then you just go to Object and Blend and then Make. And then in order to get to that options menu, you would have to go back to Object, Blend, and then Blend Options. So a nice thing about this is as long as you have the blend live, that means you haven't expanded it, is you can use your direct selection tool to select either the top or bottom row, and if you want to change the colors of that, you can. And it will actually change the gradient for you, or the blend. So I think I'm going to go and change this just a tad. I'm gonna add a bit more blue in my bottom set of feathers here. And then to get back to the normal view, I just click that arrow until that gray bar disappears at the top. You can see how it looks, and if you want to change anything, you can just use your direct selection tool to select one part of it, and you can change the colors as you want. Alright, so now I'm going to go to my eyeball here. I'm going to just right click, ungroup on both of these. That way I can get to my iris a little bit easier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my gradient panel. If you can't find your gradient panel, just go to Window and Gradient. And I'm just going to click in this slider here. And you should notice it automatically adds a gradient to that shape. And I want it to go from light in the middle here to dark around the outer edge. So next to type, I'm going to hit that second option. Then I can click on these sliders here. And I can pick out the colors I want for my gradient. Now for this, I think I want a really bright color. So I'm going to pick something warm, like a red, orange, or a yellow. And then I'm going to click on the second slider. And I want a bit more yellow to peek out around my pupil here. So I'm going to grab my gradient tool, which is off to the left here. Shortcut for that should be G. And then I'm just going to click and drag until I get the look I want for my eyeball. There we go. Then I'm going to select this eyeball. I'm going to use my eyedropper to get the same colors. Now it won't remember the span or the placement of your colors, so you can see like on the angle mine is set to something that this one is not. So I'm just going to grab my gradient tool again. And because I know that I start out in the middle of my shape, I'm just going to start there and just recreate it as best I can. And there we go. Then from here, I can add a few little embellishments. One embellishment I want to add is I want to add some eye shine to these eyes, so that way they don't look quite as dull. So I'm just going to grab my ellipse tool. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and Shift. And I'm just going to make the first eye shine. And I'm going to make sure that these are switched back to white for the fill and none for the stroke. Then I'm going to add another eye shine down here. I'm just going to make this one a little bit bigger. Then I'm going to select both of them, hold Alt or Option. I'm just going to drag straight across. If you hold Shift, that'll help you keep them even. And the reason I didn't do the Transform Reflect is because with things like shine on an eye, that's not going to get reflected. They're going to go in the same direction on both eyes. And it looks like this top shine is going to end up going underneath the crest here. So in order to be able to grab it easier, with these both still selected, I'm going to hit Command or Control G. And then I'm just going to hit Command or Control left bracket and just keep hitting that until it goes behind this crest here. Okay, and now I think I'm going to add a little bit of decoration to the top of the ear tufts here and then to the bottom of the wings. And for that, I'm just going to do something simple. I'm going to grab my pen tool. And I'm just going to click at the top of one. Make my decoration. For this, I think I'm going to grab maybe the light color from my blend here. I'm going to add a black tip to it. And I'm just going to select both of them, right click, transform, reflect, hit copy, and then just drag it to the other side here. And then I'm just going to add some banding to the wings here. So I'm going to grab my pen tool again. And I'm not going to worry about the overlap too much. I'm just going to get the basic shape down. Then I'm going to select the wing, hit Alt or Option. Then I'm going to select the wing, hit Command or Control C, Command or Control Shift V. And then I'm just going to send it backwards, so that way it's behind this light purple here. I'm going to select both of them, go back to my Pathfinder, and in the first row I'm going to hit this third option, which is Intersect, and it's only going to keep the part of the shape that is intersecting. And then if I just send it backwards, you can kind of see what it looks like. I think I'm going to actually nudge my wings a little bit more in. So I'm just using the arrow keys for this. There we go. And then I'm just going to modify this shape a little. And then I'm going to add another tip. This one's going to be black. Then I'm going to copy the wing again. And then do the paste in place one more time. Send it backwards, so that way it's behind the black shape. Select both of them. Go to my Pathfinder. Hit Intersect. And then I just need to send this backwards until it's behind my body. There we go. And if you need to, you can always modify the shape and readjust it as need be. And then to do the same thing on the other wing, I'm just going to select these, right click, transform, reflect. Again, it's going to be vertical, hit copy, and then just drag them to the other side here. And that's all we're going to do for this lesson. If you want to make any more adjustments to your owl, or maybe if you want to put a background with your little feathery buddy here, you can go ahead and do that. Once you're finished, make sure to save it. And if you want to post it online, you can always go to File, Export, Export As, and that's where you can find the option to save your images as JPEGs, PNGs, whatever file format you need. Hope you had fun with this one. See you next time.